Welcome to Love, Laughter, and Life, the lifestyle podcast for boomers living boldly and unapologetically. I'm Debbie Maxwell, retired nurse. I'm a realtor and a life enthusiast, bringing you real talk and inspiration as we navigate our prime years. We're covering relationships, retirement, downsizing, tech, travel, and simply finding purpose, with humor and with heart, of course. So, pour a cup or a glass and settle in. It's our time to shine. New episodes weekly, so subscribe and join in on the conversation. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the very first episode of this journey that we're going to be taking together. I am so glad you're here. Whether you're tuning in during your morning coffee, on a walk, or winding down your day, thank you for spending these next few moments with me. Next few minutes, I should say. Today, I want to share something deeply personal, a story about second chances, staying open to life's surprises, and how sometimes our biggest blessings show up wearing the most unlikely disguises. So instead of rewinding all the way back to my childhood, I thought I'd begin by sharing a story about one of the biggest turning points in my adult life. I've always been a helper. It's in my DNA. I just can't stand to see someone struggling with an overfilled plate when I know I can lighten the load. So that instinct is what set this particular story into motion. You know, there's something about those of us who went into nursing during the 70s and the 80s. We were part of a generation that believed that caring for others wasn't a job, it was a calling. Florence Nightingale once said, "I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse." And boy, did that resonate with me, sometimes to my own detriment. Of course, this is what always happens to me. I was working as a home care nurse at the time, and the hospital scheduler, Chris, was juggling too many patients. Picture this, it's 1995. It's pre-cell phone era for most of us. And Chris was literally buried under paper charts and a phone that would not stop ringing. One of her patients needed a simple dressing change at home, so Chris didn't want to give me another case because I was already overbooked, but I kept insisting. After all, it was just a quick visit, right? How long could a dressing change take? Well, famous last words. After going back and forth most of the day, and I do mean most of the day, we're talking multiple phone calls, and Chris finally caved and gave me the patient. Gave me the assignment about 6:30 that evening, I believe. So here's where the story takes a twist. My house was full of girlfriends waiting on me to wrap up the handover of my two toddlers to the babysitter. We had plans, you know how precious those girls' nights are when you're a working single mom. The babysitter was ready, the kids were finally winding down, and I just needed to make this one quick phone call before we headed out the door. Now, let me paint you a picture of single motherhood back in the mid 90s. There was no DoorDash, no online grocery delivery, no text to coordinate schedules. Everything took twice as long and required 3 times the planning. Getting out of the house for a girls' night out felt like I was orchestrating a military operation. Seriously. So I picked up the phone to make the call to call that new patient and just explain that after another patient's chemo infusion the next morning, I could be to his house by about 11 a.m. He did not like that answer. And when I say he didn't like it, I mean, he really didn't like it. He wanted me there at 8 a.m. sharp. No negotiation, no flexibility, just pure indignation. Now I'm standing in my kitchen, surrounded by my girlfriends who are watching this unfold. And my toddlers are finally calm with the sitter. And I'm getting an earful from a man I've never even met. After a tense back and forth it really felt like an eternity, he reluctantly agreed to the later time. I hung up the phone, turned to my girlfriends and said, and I quote myself, Here, can you believe I am trying to do a good thing for someone who's so downright indignant? One of my best friends just shook her head and said, "You can have your health care, honey." Well, we all laughed, grabbed our purses, and headed out the door, figuring this would be one difficult patient I'd see once, maybe twice, and then gladly pass along to someone else. Well, you know what they say about making God laugh? Tell him your plans. There's this wonderful Yiddish proverb: we plan, God laughs. Or as my grandmother used to say, man plans and the good Lord chuckles. I had my plan all figured out, but the universe, it seems, had other ideas entirely. The next morning, I showed up at his door at 11 a.m. on the dot, armed with my nursing bag, and I'll admit, a bit of an attitude. I was prepared to be professional. I was prepared to be efficient, quick, get in, change the dressing, get him admitted, get out. But the moment I walked through that door, everything shifted. He apologized sincerely, humbly, right there before I could even get started on his care. He explained that he'd been in pain, just frustrated with the situation, and he took it out on the first person he could, me. He told me he'd been up all night feeling terrible about how he'd spoken to me. So, just like that, my law came right down. From that moment on, our relationship took a different path. He was a gem of a patient. We connected on so many levels. And I found myself lingering at his home and making him my last patient of the day, just before I would pick up my boys from preschool just to chat. You see, he was navigating life as a C6 quadriplegic, a spinal cord injury that had changed everything for him. But here's what really struck me the most: his attitude. Despite everything he'd lost, everything he'd had to relearn, he had this incredible sense of humor. We'd laugh about the absurdities of life. We would share stories about my kids. And somewhere in those conversations, I stopped seeing him as the difficult patient and I started seeing him as him, just him. Now, let me pause here and say, as a single parent, I had sworn off of men completely. And I mean sworn in all caps, exclamation points, notarized, filed with the universe. I had declared loudly and often to anyone who would listen, I would never remarry. Been there, done that, had the t-shirt and the therapy bills to prove it. Not really. That was just a joke, but my life was full. I had my boys, my career, my friends, my routine. I didn't need complications. So this budding friendship felt safe. It was simply a nurse and her patient sharing stories, laughing, and passing the time. There was no pressure, none whatsoever, no expectations, no worry about where it might lead, because obviously it couldn't lead anywhere. He was my patient. End of story. Except it wasn't the end of the story. It was barely the beginning. The great Maya Angelou said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Well, we had plenty of stories and we couldn't stop telling them to each other. Every visit became longer, every conversation went deeper. And somewhere along the way, between the medical care and the laughter, something unexpected was happening. So when his health improved and he no longer needed nursing care, he asked me to dinner as a thank you. Just dinner, just a simple thank you, nothing more. Well, that thank you dinner turned into our very first real date, and that date turned into another and another. Each time I kept telling myself, this is just friendship. This is just two people who enjoy each other's company. This doesn't mean anything. Well, yeah, right. The heart, my friends, has a funny way of ignoring the rules. We try to impose it. We try to get past it. We fast forward through it. But now that we are 3 decades later, this life is so different. Here we are, that indignant patient The one who fussed at me over the phone, the one I almost didn't take on, has been my husband, my partner, my soulmate, and my very best friend for nearly 30 years. 30 years. Together, we've built a beautiful life. Ray married and had an instant family. He became an amazing dad in nearly an instant. Things just weren't always perfect, but together and with humor, we did it. We've navigated the daily challenges of his quadriplegia with grit, grace, and humor. Oh, so much humor. People often ask, how do you manage? How do you do it? Everything, everything. And here's my honest answer. I don't think of it as managing. I think of it as living. Yes, there are adaptive devices and routines and medical considerations that others don't ever have to think about. But every marriage has its challenges, right? Every partnership requires adaptation. Well, we learned early on that laughter is our secret weapon. There was our first Christmas when we visited his Mima's house. And oh my goodness, he began proclaiming his love for me right in front of everybody. It was a room full of people there. Me, I turned 50 shades of red. We still laugh about that today. There have been a million other small moments that could have been frustrating, could have been defeating, but we chose to find the joy instead. Helen Keller, who knew a thing or two about overcoming challenges, said life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. We chose the adventure. Every single day we choose the adventure. So, you know what's wild? If you told me back in nursing school that I'd end up here transitioning from nursing to real estate and now stepping into this new chapter as someone sharing stories and encouragement with our boomer generation, I would have laughed in your face. But here's what I've learned. Life doesn't move in straight lines. It zigs and it zags. It throws curveballs. It introduces you to people who annoy you on the phone and then become your everything. It takes careers you thought would last forever and gently nudges you toward new purposes you never even imagined. And the beautiful thing, if we're really brave enough to stay open to it, to not slam the door when things get uncomfortable or don't go according to my plan or your plan, we get to experience all of it, the messy, the magical, the unexpected, all of it. When I think back to that day, the one where I almost turned down the patient, the one where he fussed at me over the phone in front of my girlfriends, the one where I stood in my kitchen complaining to my girlfriends that I can't help but smile. Oh my goodness. Because sometimes, my friends, the greatest blessings in life disguise themselves as inconveniences, interruptions, or even frustrations. That difficult phone call, that was love knocking. That overloaded schedule, that was destiny making room. That moment of wanting to say no, that was the universe testing whether I was paying attention or not. And if you stay open, if you remain curious instead of closed, flexible instead of rigid, life can lead you exactly where you were, exactly where you were meant to be. Exactly. So here's what I want to leave you with today. Whatever chapter you're in, whether you're navigating a career change like me, adjusting to an empty nest, rediscovering yourself after decades of caring for everyone else, or standing at the threshold of something new and terrifying, stay open. Stay open to the difficult phone calls that might be something more. Stay open to the inconvenient requests that might be divine appointments. Stay open to the second chances, the unexpected apologies, the friendships that become love, the friendships that become love stories. And as the poet Rumi wrote, let yourself be silently drawn to the strange pull of what you really love that will not lead you astray. I was drawn to helping. That pull led me to nursing, which led me to that phone call. which led me to him, which led me to the life I have today. And now that same pull is leading me here to you, to this conversation, to this new adventure of connecting with and encouraging others who are navigating their own before and beyond moments. This is just episode 1, friends. We have so many more to go, so many more stories to share, so many laughs ahead, and so many moments of recognition where you'll say, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm going through right now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying open with me. Until next time, keep your heart soft and your coffee strong. Hey, thanks for joining me on this new adventure. Until next time, keep shining, keep laughing, and remember, this is where stories spark love, laughter, and just the joy of living. I'll see you in the next episode.